I feel like a little bit of a carnival barker here. But in following up that last video where I talked about making your own magnetic safety switch using an old Shopsmith switch, I got a bunch of feedback that kind of falls into a couple categories. One category is, where am I supposed to find that switch? Good point. They're available on eBay occasionally, but they're not all that common. Another category of questions was, well, what about foot switches, of which I have a couple for us to take a look at. And the last category was, this is just a bad idea, period. So we'll break these down and answer those questions, comments, and cheap shots. So safety first, let's talk about the fact that some people think this is just a bad idea. The first one being that a magnetic switch attached to something is a bad idea because when you need it, it may have fallen off. Magnets might vibrate off of the piece that you're using. When you go to smack it, they might move. That's a very fair assessment. This particular switch where I'm pushing down on it, I'm pushing down with exactly the kind of force that if that magnet was going to fail, it would be under that type of force, right? It's going to slide down the leg. I figure it's better than not having that safety switch at all. So, without that, I mentioned I might have to run past my machine that's running, and that part of it I don't like. So I'm opting in for this. If you're feeling unsafe about it, then sure, step away from the machine, let your bowl blank blow to pieces, or let your bandsaw toss its blade out, or whatever challenge you're facing, let that pass. Maybe you can get to the outlet. I don't know. It's up to you. But in my case, I have found this style of switch to be helpful. Also, as far as safety is concerned, I do not like foot switches for most of the functions that I'm using in a shop. Do they have their place? Absolutely. You can use them while you're drilling. You can use them with a router table. You can use them for dust collectors. You can use them on things that primarily are not large motors. I wouldn't use this on a jointer. I wouldn't use it on a planer. I personally would not use a foot switch on a table saw. Well, here's the thing. Your Shopsmith, if you're using Shopsmith tools, is all those things and then some. And I think that there's a risk that if you leave your machine plugged into a foot switch, you're going to step on it and turn it on when you least suspect it. Now, how do I know this? Because I have a switch that I ran on my Shopsmith dust collector for quite a long time, and I can't tell you the dozens of times where I was changing a blade or doing something where my hand was nearby and I stepped on the pedal and the dust collector came on. That was enough to convince me that I'm not interested in a foot switch. My wife, on the other hand, likes to use it on the scroll saw. I guess that makes perfect sense. If a scroll saw came on accidentally, probably not going to do a lot of harm, but many of the tools on my Shopsmith might. Let's take a look at these switches. The one that came up over and over again was Harbor Freight, and Harbor Freight has two different switches. Foot switches can control your machine in one of two ways. Either they're momentarily on, so while your foot is holding it down, the power is on. When your foot is off, the power is off. Others of them cycle. They're on, and then they're off. They're on, and then they're off. Now, what's ironic here, I forget which one is which myself. If you haven't seen these sell for around 14 bucks if you have a coupon. They're less, obviously. They are 100% plastic. They lend themselves to be screwed down to something. I don't know what, maybe a block of wood or something. But I think they're okay. They have a grounded plug, and they have about a 6-foot cord on them, which may or may not be enough. Let's plug this into power. I have my Shopsmith turned on, and I've got its cord right here. Let's plug that into the back of this, and let's see which switch we have here. I was fascinated to know after I set them on the table and realized I forgot which was which, that there's no label whatsoever on any part of that. So let's see what happens. Okay, so that's a momentary switch as long as your foot is on it. Some folks call that a dead man switch for obvious reasons. If you fall dead, your machine's going to turn off. So that should mean that this fella right here should be on and off. Oh, and apparently it's on. That's interesting. I was playing with it. That's why that happened. So yeah, on and off. This is one that if you were turning on a dust collector, for example, and then you're going to walk around your planer or walk around your table saw, this would be a good choice to run your dust collector on. Then I have another one here that I thought was worth looking at because it looks so much like one that I had for my Shopsmith dust collector. This one is made by Wen. It's metal, both top and bottom are metal with a rubber pad, has 4 rubber feet. And this one came in at about 12 bucks on Amazon. And this has what's called a piggyback plug. So this part right here, you plug your tool in, and then this plugs into the wall, or extension cord if you happen to have a short enough, powerful enough extension cord for your application. But again, this one works. Where you're stepping on it, it's on. When you step off, it's off. All 3 of these claim to have a 15 amp power, which is fantastic, and that's what we're going to need for many of the tools in our shop.
Another similar style of switch that might be worth considering is something called an air-actuated foot switch. This is a switch that uses a little rubber bellows that you step on, and that sends a puff of air or pressure of air to the switch. These are available also in on and off, as well as momentary switches. Now, the one big advantage these have is if you happen to be working in a space that occasionally gets wet. My son's brother-in-law works in a basement that occasionally floods, and this would be an excellent choice there because these other ones that are wired could be a little dangerous if the floor is wet.
So this is what's called a paddle switch. It has a very large on button or start button and a very large paddle to turn it off. This one comes with a 7-foot cord. Boy, I looked at a whole bunch of these, and this is the longest of them by far. 7-foot primary cord and about a 2-foot lead that would go to your tool. So let me plug the switch into my outlet. I'm going to plug my Shopsmith into the power side, and this should turn the tool on, and the paddle should shut it off. Okay, that works as planned. Again, a 15 amp circuit here. Now, somebody left a comment, and it was seconded by someone else, and that was recommending either instead of the Harbor Freight paper towel holder, or maybe as another option, something called a gun magnet. And I, in a moment of forgetfulness, said, "What's a gun magnet?" And they mentioned that it's a sort of magnet that you would mount underneath the dashboard of your car. With that, you can then mount a gun. So sure enough, I've kind of forgot all about that. These are rare earth magnets, and this particular one has a nice rubberized finish on it, and it's mounted on a piece of what feels like polycarbonate, but it's got 3M VHB or very high bond abrasive on it. Abrasive? Come on, Scott. Very high bond adhesive on it, and I'm just going to stick this puppy right on the back of that switch. These are pressure sensitive, so if we apply a bit of pressure around this and make sure that we've bonded that well. So a little closer here, you can see that has been bonded with the VHB adhesive tape, and now I've got a nice thin, about a 1/4 inch profile of magnet, and this should be able to attach to the leg of your lathe or the leg of my Shopsmith. Might even be able to attach this right here to the steel belt cover on my Shopsmith. Look at that. So I think this is the bee's knees. I think this is really the idea that you should emulate. You can get this switch today or tomorrow. Amazon will deliver tomorrow. I'll put, of course, an affiliate link down in the video description to both the magnet and the switch. The switch is manufactured by Rockler. If you have a local Rockler store, you could pick one of those up there as well. We all know their reputation is great. It's going to be a great solution. So I look forward to your questions, comments, and cheap shots. I think this is the idea to stick with, though. Make it a great day.